Hi, I'm Tom Ziglar, CEO of the Zig Ziglar Corporation, and welcome to the Ziglar Coaching Academy. We are digging in deep to Zig Ziglar's legendary program, Strategies for Success, the Blueprint for Achievement. And we're going to be talking about today's lesson, which is maintaining the right attitude from the Strategies for Success, Blueprint for Achievement. That's right, maintaining the right attitude. As you think about it, just realize that everything rises and falls on your attitude, the way we treat people, the way we see the world, the way we handle challenges. When we look at things, do we see an opportunity or an obstacle? Our attitude does all that. So let's dig in and let's watch the first story from Zig.
The scene is Phoenix, Arizona. My son and I had been playing in a golf tournament out there. During the tournament, the weather was absolutely magnificent, but the day we were headed back to Dallas, it was raining and hail was falling. It was a mess. By the time we got to the airport, we got soaking wet trying to get into the airport itself. We went down, there were about 3,212 people in the airport, got down to the line, and 476 of them about were waiting in line. We obviously didn't get to the front of the line. The gate agent, when we first got there, was a fair-skinned, blue-eyed blonde. But everybody that came along were dumping on him. I mean, they blamed him for the weather, they blamed him for the computer foul-up, they blamed him for the world economy, they blamed him for everything. By the time we got to him, he looked like the cruise director for the Titanic. I mean, somebody had licked all the red off of his candy. He was in bad shape. As a matter of fact, by the time we got to him, the red in his neck had moved all the way up, and he was a flaming redhead. Well, as is my custom when I greeted him, it was with a lot of enthusiasm. I said, "Well, how you doing?" He said, "Compared to who?" I said, "Compared to that person who doesn't have a job of any kind, who doesn't have nice warm clothes to wear, who has no future that he can call his own, who lives in a land where there is no freedom of speech or travel, who does not know from one day to the next what is going to happen to him." I said, "How you doing?" You've never seen such a radical change in a human being. He smiled broadly and he said, "I'm doing wonderfully well, and thank you so much for reminding me." A lot of times we need to be reminded, don't we? The young man got so excited, he got so carried away, he was so appreciative of the fact that I'd called something to his attention that he moved my son and me up to first class. Now, as we walked in, I could not help but notice that he was greeting the other people in an entirely different way. More pleasantly, more courteously. Now, the weather was still bad, the computer was still fouled up, the economy had not changed. The only thing that had changed was his attitude. And his attitude changed because the input in his mind had changed. That he still remembers that day about that fellow that came along and said those nice things to him, and his attitude was so much better. How many of you believe he still remembers all of that, and as a result, his attitude is permanently good? Not going to happen, is it? Because since then, there have been probably some negatives that happen. Now, he doesn't have a chance to listen to me, give him a little pep talk every day. But the neat thing about Strategies for Success, you have that opportunity. Because in Automobile University, you can listen every day, and the interesting thing is, as you listen every day, you're going to discover that it becomes new and new and new again. You want to let your family listen along with you. Because as the family listens, almost regardless of age, I see adults almost every day of my life who said, "You know, when I was a little guy, 5 years old, my mom and dad started throwing those tapes in there, and I started listening to them, and I got to tell you, at first I didn't like them. But over a period of time, they started to have an effect on me." Automobile University is a wonderful institution, and when you have the family listen together, you get on the same page. You adopt the same values. You communicate more easily and readily. You have things in common that will make a difference, and a big difference. The giant Belgian horse on its own can pull 8,000 pounds. Hook him up with another giant Belgian horse. the team will pull 17,000 pounds. Send them off to school, teach them to pull in harmony, and the team will pull 25,000 pounds. There's something about being on the same page.
The Phoenix Airport story, the Phoenix gate agent, attitude reset. I was there. I remember it. Here's the principle. Your input shapes your attitude. Attitude shapes outcomes. Here's the coaching question for you. What single positive input could you add today that would most improve your attitude and behavior towards others? For me, it's a good night's sleep. Getting that input of the right amount of sleep. It might be having the quiet time in the morning. It might be reading something, the good, the clean, the pure, the powerful, and the positive that I put into my mind. And then we moved into the Belgian horses. Here's the principle from the story. Shared learning, working with a team, getting people on your side multiplies the amount that you can pull in life. Alignment outperforms solo effort. So here's the coaching question. How can you build a simple shared learning rhythm, 15 minutes a day with your family or team this week? If you're coaching somebody one-on-one, what a fantastic way to get them excited about that. Now let's watch the next segment.
How do you build, develop, and maintain a winning attitude? I want to ask you just how important is attitude anyhow? Well, let me tell you what Alan Cox, he's the author of the Confessions of a Corporate Headhunter, has to say about attitude. He said, attitude determines strength and direction. He asked 1,173 executives in major corporations about positive thinking. 49% of these executives said it affected their own success very strongly. An additional 46.5% said it was a significant factor, and 4.5% were neutral about it. There wasn't a one who said there was damage done by having the right attitude. Your attitude is enormously important, particularly in the first part of the day. Here's what the psychologists say. They say that your first significant encounter at the beginning of the day has more bearing on your attitude for the rest of the day than does the next 4 contacts that you're going to have. Now understand, you have complete control of the first part of your day. You can isolate yourself somewhere and read or listen, or you can get in your automobile and you can listen on the way to your work, to your job, or whatever it is that you're doing. And sometimes it only takes a few minutes for it to make a difference. I had less than 30 seconds in front of that gate agent, and yet there was an attitude change there. Just in those few seconds, it did make a difference. Calvert Robert says this about your attitude, and it's validated by Harvard and Stanford University. They say that 85% of the reason a person gets a job and gets ahead in that job is because of their attitude. It's enormously important, and we need to understand that. The good news is, according to William James, he simply says that we can change our lives, and this is the most important discovery of our time. We can change our lives by changing our attitude. Let me tell you one of the most fascinating stories I've ever been permitted to participate in. A number of years ago, Laurie Majors, my executive assistant, got a phone call from a lady in Birmingham, Alabama. At the end of the conversation, she said, Zig, she said, I believe this woman thinks she's got an impossible problem, but I believe you can solve that problem with her in just a few minutes if you will spend that time with her. I said, well, Laurie, tell her to meet me backstage. I'll get there about 10 minutes early. My schedule was such that was about all I had. Well, I got there, and I was on backstage behind the curtain on one side. She spotted me from the other side, and as she walked across the stage, I have never seen as much anger in a human being in my life as I saw in her. She almost started crying when she saw me. She said, oh, I'm just so glad to see you. I got this horrible job. I hate it. I hate everything about it. I hate everybody down there. I mean, you talking about negative Nell, she was it. She said, can you help me? Now understand, I've only got about 10 minutes. So I looked at her, and one thing I have learned, I don't do counseling, but I talk with a lot of people who do, in psychology, psychiatry, and the ministry. And they tell me that everybody who comes to you with a problem are not necessarily looking for a solution. I couldn't understand that for a long time. Why do they bring you a problem if they don't want to solve it? Well, I can tell you why. They want to tell you about it, you about it, you about it, you about it, and you about it. And if you foul up the deal and solve the problem, they can't tell you again, you again. They want the attention that goes with the problem. And every company just about it has that kind of an individual. They want the attention that goes with griping and complaining. Well, I looked at the lady, and it wasn't unkindly, but firmly I said to her, yes, and you know, ma'am, I'm afraid your problem is about to get worse. She said, what do you mean? I said, I believe they're going to fire you. She was stunned. I couldn't have stunned her more if I'd hit her in the face with a bucket of ice water. She said, fire me? Why on earth would they fire me? The inflection in her voice clearly said, they're the bad guys, I'm the good guy. Why don't they fire them and keep me? Have you ever noticed that people who are the problem never recognize that they are? They're in complete denial. They think denial is just a river in Egypt. Why would they fire me? I said, ma'am, I don't believe there's a company in America big enough to contain this much poison in one small spot. Have you ever noticed that when somebody is about to lose something they've been complaining about, whether it's a car, a home, a mate, a job, or whatever, when all of a sudden it appears they're going to lose them, it takes on brand new value. She looked at me and said, well, what can I do? I said, do you really want to know? She said, yes, I do. That's the reason I came to see you. I came looking for help, but you sure haven't been any help so far. I said, well, ma'am, I've got an idea, and I will absolutely guarantee you it positively, definitely, absolutely will work if you will just do it. She said, I'll try anything within reason. I said, okay, when you get home tonight, all of your household tasks are complete. It's bedtime. Get off in a room right by yourself. Get a sheet of paper out, and at the top of it write, I like my job because. She interrupted me. She said, that'll be easy. I don't like nothing about that job. Don't like nothing about those people down there. And I said, well, just as a matter of curiosity, do you work there for benevolent reasons, or do they pay you for working there? She said, well, I got to confess, they pay me. And I said, and you don't like to be paid? Oh, she said, yes, I do. I said, okay, tell you what you do. Open your notebook right now. We'll start our list of the things you like about your job. They pay you for working there, and you do like it, don't you? She said, absolutely. But she just stood there. I said, no, open your notebook now, and we'll get busy on the list. She just stood there. I said, ma'am, let me tell you what my experience in life has been. I've discovered that in 100% of the cases, no exception, people who won't take step number one never take step number two. You see, she had come to me with an impossible dream. Her dream was that nice Mr. Ziglar was going to solve all of her problems, and she would live happily ever after. But folks, I got news for you. I can't solve her problems. I can't solve your problems. But I will give you some steps that I'll absolutely, definitely, and positively will work for you, as it worked eventually for her. I said, well, ma'am, let me tell you something. Unless you're willing to take step number one right now, it's been nice talking with you. She angrily opened her notebook. Before we got through, there were 22 things she liked about her job. Not only did they pay her for working there, they paid her above average. She had 3 weeks vacation with pay. She had a retirement program. She was in on profit sharing. She had health insurance, life insurance, and accident insurance. She lived less than 10 minutes from home. She was in on management decisions. The company sent her to 3 seminars a year to be paid for. She had her own private office and parking place. 22 things that she liked about her job. Now I said, ma'am, when you get home tonight, everything is finished. Get off in a room right by yourself, close the doors, change one word from I like my job to I love my job. Get in front of that mirror, and folks, I cannot say this strongly enough, but I'm going to try. The eyes are the windows of the soul. Look yourself in the eye and with excitement and enthusiasm say, I love my job because they pay me for working there. I love my job because they pay me above average for working there. I love my job because I have a wonderful insurance program. I love my job before every one of the statements. You will sleep better that night. You see, there's something hidden in what I'm saying to you now. When she says, I like my job, she's really saying, I'm grateful for my job. And of all of the emotions we can have, according to Hans Selye, the #1 stress specialist in America, the healthiest of all human emotions is gratitude. I said, you go down that list. I like my job, I love my job rather. That is a way of gratitude. You'll sleep better the first night. Tomorrow morning, when you get up, get back in front of the mirror just before you go to work. Get back in front of the mirror and repeat the process again with excitement and enthusiasm. I love my job because, and take the list with you. Because the reality is, you see, you will have started to change from a fault finder to a good finder. Some people do really find fault like there's a reward for it. They really do. Take the list with you, and you will be able to add to that list, absolutely guaranteed. Do this every morning and every night, and you will have an astonishing recovery from this advanced case of stinking thinking. Now, I didn't say that to her, but I'm saying it to you. That's what it was. It was an advanced case of stinking thinking. Well, 6 weeks later, I was back in Birmingham, Alabama. I was doing a follow-up sales seminar. Now, the lady was not in sales, but she had been listening to my tapes. She had been listening to Automobile University, and she had discovered that everybody sells. Everybody who will ever hear this is in selling. Whether you're a school teacher, a civil service worker, a military personnel, an executive secretary, it doesn't make any difference what you do, you sell every day of your life. There she was at the sales seminar, seated on the front row, grinning so wide she could have eaten a banana sideways. I'm telling you, you're talking about somebody that was excited. She was turned on. I said, well, how you doing? She grinned even more broadly and said, Mr. Ziglar, I'm doing wonderfully well. And thank you for asking. She said, you cannot believe how much those people down there have changed. I got a lid on the line, folks. You're not going to change anybody else till you change you.
Wow, there's been an amazing amount of research on attitude. We've got it from Cox and from Harvard and from Stanford. But here's the principle that I really want you to dig into. Skill and strategy matter, but attitude is the force multiplier. Here's the coaching question. Where is your attitude currently capping your otherwise adequate skills? How many times have we been to a restaurant that had all the amenities, it had the right menu, the food was prepared correctly, but it was the attitude that either killed the experience or made it go over the top of the people who were there. And then there's the Birmingham lady, I hate my job story. What a turnaround that was. So here is the principle of the Birmingham story. Gratitude-fueled self-talk transforms environments by first transforming the self. That's right, you change yourself and suddenly everybody around you is more pleasant. That's not hard to believe, is it? We've all experienced that. So here's the coaching question. List 10 I love my job because statements. How does that shift your energy and behavior by this Friday? So think about this. If we start having gratitude for all the things that we get to do and all the things we're grateful for in the work that we do, that just boils over to everything else in our life. So let's dig in and let's put that to practice this week. If you have a coaching client, make sure that you set this up strategically. You might even want to show them this little video segment as part of your coaching call with them, and then hold them accountable to detailing out the things that they're grateful for. Okay, let's go in and watch the next segment from Zig.
Unfortunate thing, this lady had been raised in a very negative environment. First, her parents had told her that she'd never amount to anything. that said, you know, you're always late, you're always sloppy, why can't you be like your brother or your sister or whatever. When she got married, her husband had continued it, and so her self-talk had become completely negative. Everything that she said about herself was negative. You know, like Dad said, I'll never amount to anything. Or like my husband says, I can't do anything right. But when she started changing the input, then some radical changes took place. Now let's take a look and see, as we look at this, exactly what had happened and what can you do that would make the same difference. First of all, she changed her mental diet. She changed it. Instead of listening to the incessant talk shows on radio and the traffic reports and the negative news, she started filling her mind on the way to work every day with the good, clean, pure, positive, exciting information. You see, you can prepare in advance for how you want to feel when you get there. By preparing in advance with the good, clean, pure, positive stuff, you get there with a good frame of mind, and you will affect the people around you. She changed her mental diet. The second thing is she became a good finder. Now, the exciting thing is, as she learned to find the good in her job, she also started finding the good in her husband. And I will share a story with you a little bit later that will tell you why that can happen and how it can happen and what the benefits to everyone will be. And third thing, she started talking to herself as she already had been doing, as all of us do. You know, I've had people say, well, I don't talk to myself. Yeah, and you lie about other things too, you know. Why, some people even talk to the driver of another car 3 blocks away. And you're not going to believe this, but some people even talk to golf balls. Can you believe it? You know, stay out of that water, turn left. Oh, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? You've always talked to yourself. You always will talk to yourself. Now all we got to do is learn the right language to say. We got to change that self-talk. But in the bottom line, what we're really getting at is the fact that if you're going to change your self-talk, you got to change something else. Shad Helmstetter, one of the psychologists that I refer to on occasion, put it this way. He says you can't change from a negative mindset to a positive mindset without changing from negative talking to positive talking. To do that, you must change the input from negative to positive. When you got the right attitude, you will respond to life instead of reacting. Now, what I mean by that? Have you ever gone to the doctor and the doctor gives you a prescription and says, see me tomorrow? You walk in the next day and she shakes her head and says, uh-oh, your body is reacting to the medicine. We got to change the prescription. You get nervous. But if she says, you know, hey, the prescription is working, your body is responding to treatment. Respond is positive. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been driving down the highway or down on your way to work, minding your business? You're neither positive nor negative. You're just kind of in neutral. And all of a sudden, some idiot, to be kind to him, pulls in front of you. You hit your brakes, you hit your horn, and you give him a big old fishing horn and say, why don't you watch where you're going, you dummy? You could have hit me. We could have both been killed, but I got your tag number, and the next time I see you out here, it's going to be me and you. Okay. You get to the office and what do? You tell the first person you see about that idiot on the streets out there, must have been on drugs or drunk or something. I'm telling you, I can't believe the way people are doing that. You tell the second person you talk to about these crazy folks around you, and the third person and the fourth person. And in the meantime, the dude that did the dastardly deed rides merrily along, doesn't have a clue that you even exist. And yet he's in complete control of you, your attitude, affecting the way you do your job, affecting the way you affect other people, building a ceiling over you that is a low ceiling, far lower than you're capable of receiving or reaching, simply because you reacted instead of responded. Another question. Have you ever been running a little bit late for an important appointment? And you're going along real good, and all of a sudden there's a huge traffic jam in front of you at the worst possible time. How many of you have ever done that? Okay. How many of you will confess that when you saw that, you slapped the steering wheel and you stomped your foot, and shook your fist? Why don't they do something around here about that? How long is this traffic jam? I mean, have any of you ever done that? Can I see your hand? Well, this is probably going to surprise you, but that's exactly what I recommend. Because I'm certain you discovered that the louder you blew the horn, the people in front of you just opened the lanes so you could go on through. Now, folks, if there's a better way, you'd want to know what it was, wouldn't you? Answer's yes. Remember, I help you on the tough ones, okay? Well, this is where Automobile University comes in. What you want to do is try to guesstimate the length of the delay. Boy, it's going to keep us here 30 minutes. Now, let me see. In 30 minutes' time, I can build my vocabulary with at least 10 new words. I can learn 2 new sales closes. I can start to study this investment strategy. Did you know that you can learn everything from Chinese art to the Bible while you're seated in Automobile University? I was a visiting scholar for the University of Southern California for 2 years, and here's what they discovered. In 3 years' time, if you live in a metropolitan area and drive 12,000 miles a year, and if you don't live in a metropolitan area, you probably drive a whole lot further than that. But in 3 years' time, you can acquire the equivalent of 2 years of college in your automobile. Automobile University is truly a magnificent place. Now, the attitude itself is important. But I got to confess, I get a little perturbed with some of these folks who say, man, with positive thinking, you can just do anything. Folks, that simply is not true. I'm a positive thinker. And I really am. I mean, anybody would tell you that if they know me at all. But with all of my positive, optimistic outlook, beat on life, if you needed major surgery, I wouldn't recommend me. Oh, I'd do the best I could. I really would. I'd be enthusiastic, motivated, positive. I'd give it my best shot, but you'd still die. Positive thinking won't let you do anything, but it will let you do everything better than negative thinking will. Positive thinking will let you use the ability, the training, the experience, the knowledge you have, and that is awesome.
So here's a question for you. Are you a fault finder or a good finder? And what we got to do is we got to move to good finder. Why? Here's the principle. You can't talk yourself into a new mindset on a junk information diet. Here's the coaching question. What negative inputs will you subtract this week? And what positive inputs will you replace them? Here's the reality. The fastest way to success is to replace bad habits with good habits. Why is that so important? Because if you just take away the bad habit and don't replace it with a good habit, soon other bad things will fill that void. And so as you think about the input that you get every week, it's not just eliminating the negative. That's key. That's essential, but it's putting the good stuff in there. And then what about this? How are you going to react versus respond? The road rage and the traffic jam, because reacting is negative and responding is positive. So here's the principle. Reaction gives your control away. When we react, the other person has control. If we respond, we regain agency in that situation. We keep the power. So here's the coaching question. Think about your own life. Where do you most often react? And now, what pre-planned responses can you come up with that you can practice in advance so that when that thing happens, you respond instead of react next time? What a powerful story that is. And it leads right into one of the most powerful things you can do, and that's be a student of Automobile University. So here's the principle behind this. Turn commute time into compound learning time. I call this the 2-for-1. If you're commuting somewhere, put the valuable information on in your car and listen to it and grow while you go. If you're working out, you can do the same thing. If you're doing housework, you can do the same thing. So here's a coaching question that you can apply today with one of your clients or with yourself. Which topic will you major in during your next 30 hours of drive time? Be intentional about this so that you can create the future you want by becoming that person while you're doing other stuff anyway. And this goes into this next point. Positive thinking won't let you do anything, but it will let you do everything better than negative thinking. So here's the principle. Positivity doesn't replace competence, it unleashes it. Here's the coaching question. What skill investment would make your positive mindset actually pay off? All right, we've come to the end of part 1 of maintaining the right attitude from the Strategies for Success Blueprint for Achievement. I want you to stay tuned. Part 2 is coming soon. And I want you to subscribe if you haven't already. Go and check out all the other valuable lessons that we have right here on the Ziglar Coaching Academy. If you have a comment about this video that you just watched or a question, just put it right there on the page and invite your friends to come. So subscribe and like and tell others. And we'll see you again next time right here on the Ziglar Coaching Academy.